The Life and Legacy of Theodore Roosevelt. A sleep narration script. Settle into stillness now. Let your shoulders drop, your breath deepen. The lights grow dim around you, and time begins to soften. The year is 1858. Somewhere in Manhattan, in a brownstone on East 20th Street, a child struggles for breath. A boy who will one day move mountains, reshape a nation, and leave his footprints across the world. But tonight, in this quiet moment, he is simply a small, fragile child, fighting to fill his lungs with air. You are there now, in that gaslit room, where shadows dance gently against patterned wallpaper. You hear the soft rustle of a mother's skirts, the low murmur of a father's voice. Steady, soothing, close. The city outside hums faintly. The clatter of carriage wheels, the distant call of a street vendor, the heartbeat of New York settling into night. Here inside, though, there is only the rhythm of labored breathing, the gentle creak of a rocking chair, the warmth of love surrounding a boy who cannot yet know what he will become. Theodore Roosevelt Jr. enters the world on October 27, 1858. Born into comfort, yet burdened from his first breath, with a body that seems to turn against him. Asthma grips him, tightens around his chest like iron bands. Night after night, you watch as his father, Theodore Sr., tall, strong, endlessly patient, carries him through darkened halls, whispering comfort, walking until the attacks fade and dawn's first light creeps through the curtains, bringing the promise of air once more. The Roosevelt home is a place of warmth and wonder. You walk its halls now, fingers tracing polished banisters, pausing where the gaslight spills onto rich Turkish carpets. The air smells of leather-bound books and pipe smoke, with a hint of his mother's sweet perfume. Martha Bullock, Roosevelt, Mittie, brings the grace and storytelling tradition of the South, tales of Georgia plantations and family honor that spark Theodore's young imagination. But it is his father who becomes the boy's guiding star. You see him now, a man of quiet strength and uncommon compassion, moving through his days with a deliberate kindness. He gives to the poor, works for charity, believes deeply that privilege must serve purpose. And so the boy follows him, absorbing these lessons like rain into thirsty soil, learning that true strength is gentle, and that power, when rightly held, carries the duty to protect those who cannot protect themselves. The boy's world is limited by illness, yet his imagination knows no bounds. You sit beside him now, in the hush of a dimly lit room, watching as he leans over thick books filled with sketches of animals and faraway lands. His curiosity is endless, a wild, bright flame that illness cannot dim. He draws birds with patient care, catalogs insects in small glass jars, and reads everything he can find about the natural world. When he is well enough, he travels with his family, across the sea to Europe, to Egypt, drifting up the Nile where palm trees stretch over ancient waters, and the air itself seems heavy with memory. At night, when the asthma returns, his father still walks with him, still carries him through darkened halls, speaking softly of courage and resolve. And one day, you are there when it happens. In a sunlit gymnasium his father has built just for him, Theodore Sr. looks into his son's eyes and says words that will shape the boy's destiny. You have the mind, but you have not the body. And without the help of the body, the mind cannot go as far as it should. You must make your body. Breathe now. Let those words linger in the air. You watch as young Theodore, barely a teenager, accepts this challenge as one might accept a sacred vow. He begins to lift weights, to box, to push against the frailty that has held him captive. The work is hard, so hard. His lungs burn, his muscles tremble, but something within him refuses to yield. It is the same will that once fought for each breath in the night, the same strength he saw reflected in his father's steady hand. Time drifts like smoke now, and you find yourself walking beside him at Harvard. The year is 1876. The air is sharp and clean. The leaves in Harvard Yard whisper beneath your feet. Theodore Roosevelt is 18. still slight, but no longer fragile. His energy hums like electricity, restless and alive. His rooms overflow with books and specimens, notes scattered across every surface. He sleeps little, studies endlessly, speaks quickly, always quickly, his excitement spilling over every word. His classmates find him odd, perhaps. This intense young man with the eager eyes and bright, fast voice. Yet something about him draws you in. The warmth of his enthusiasm, the sheer joy he takes in living. You sit with him now, in quiet libraries where dust motes drift through shafts of afternoon light, and the silence is broken only by the soft turning of pages. He is deep in his first great work, a naval history of the War of 1812, written with the care and precision that will define all his writing. But he is not only a scholar. He rows on the Charles River, boxes in the gymnasium, wanders the New England woods, naming birds by their calls. He is always moving, always reaching outward, never content to simply observe the world, but intent on living within it. Time shifts, and autumn light filters through the leaves of 1878. You are beside him as his world subtly changes. In that golden season, he meets Alice Hathaway Lee, a presence like sunlight, calm and radiant. Something within him brightens. His life, once driven by will and discipline, now hums with quiet wonder. By 1880, their paths have intertwined completely. On a crisp October day, his 22nd birthday, they marry. You stand with them in a candlelit church, where the air feels heavy with warmth and promise. Two young hearts, certain that life will stretch endlessly before them. For now, it does. The reception glows with laughter and soft music, a blur of joy and gentle light. The future feels wide and unshadowed. The world slows here. The air stills. You breathe with them, and the moment lingers, suspended in the glow of love untested by time. After Harvard, Theodore steps into the restless current of politics, the rough, shifting world of New York City government. It is 1881. You walk beside him through corridors thick with cigar smoke, into crowded rooms where Tammany Hall bosses trade favors behind closed doors, where principle often bends to profit. He's only 23, far younger than most who stand in those chambers. To the old political hands, he seems a curiosity, a wealthy young reformer, bright but harmless. Yet, he is anything but. You watch as he throws himself into the work, challenging the machine, uncovering corruption, insisting, with that clear, urgent voice, on duty, integrity, and the common good. He studies late into the night, surrounded by piles of papers and candlelight, mastering the intricate weave of legislation, searching always for what is just. They call him impractical. They call him naive. But he does not stop. These are golden years, filled with promise, energy, and light. He moves between Albany and New York City, between the fierce arena of politics and the quiet comfort of home with Alice. In 1883, he begins to build a house at Oyster Bay, on the north shore of Long Island, a place he will call Sagamore Hill. You stand with him on the bluff overlooking the Sound, the salt wind curling through the grass. He looks out over the wide water, already seeing the shape of the life to come. A home filled with laughter and books, sunlight on wood floors, the gathered treasures of a world he means to explore. Alice is expecting their first child now, and Theodore's joy feels complete. Everything he's ever longed for seems close enough to touch. Love, family, meaningful work, the sense that his life is finally opening into its purpose. The winter of 1884 settles over New York, a season of gray skies and cold wind sweeping in from the river. Beneath the brightness of his young life, something unseen begins to gather, quiet and inevitable. February 14th. You are with him in the assembly chamber when the telegram arrives. A daughter has been born, but there is trouble. He reads the words again and again, the color fading from his face. Without a word, he leaves the hall, and boards the night train south to New York City. You sit beside him in the dark carriage, the wheels clattering softly over frozen rails, the lamplight flickering across his hands. The air feels heavy, waiting. He reaches his mother's home on West 57th Street near midnight. The house is still, too still. His brother meets him at the door, and in that moment, Theodore understands. Upstairs, the air is thick with sickness and candle smoke. In one room, his mother lies dying of typhoid fever. In another, Alice, his wife, his beloved Alice, is slipping away, her strength fading hour by hour. You climb the stairs with him, step by slow step. He moves between the rooms, powerless to stop what is unfolding. The night stretches endlessly. His mother passes first, before dawn. 11 hours later, Alice is gone too. The house is silent now. The light has gone out of it. In his diary that night, Theodore draws a single heavy X across the page. Beneath it, he writes only one line. The light has gone out of my life. Let the silence hold you now. Feel the stillness of that moment. The hollow quiet that follows unbearable loss. The world has dimmed for Theodore Roosevelt. He is 25 years old, a widower, and the father of a newborn daughter he cannot yet bring himself to hold. He names her Alice, after her mother, then entrusts her to the care of his sister, Anna. New York has become unbearable. Every room, every street heavy with memory. Through the final days of a legislative session, he moves like a shadow, completing each duty with mechanical calm, waiting for the chance to leave. And when June arrives, he turns west. The Dakota Badlands. You travel with him now, far from the crowded streets and the noise of the city, into a landscape of raw, untamed grace. The air is dry and sharp, carrying the scent of dust and sage. The earth rolls away in vast, broken shapes. Ridges carved by wind and time, painted in shades of rust, cream, and deep red. Here, the horizon stretches endlessly, and the silence feels alive. At night, beneath the boundless sky, the stars burn so brightly they seem to cast their own faint shadows across the land. Theodore has come here to disappear for a while, to lose himself in the rhythm of work and in the vast, unending quiet of the West. He buys cattle, establishes 2 ranches, and throws himself into the life of a cowboy with the same determined energy he brings to everything. You ride beside him now, across the open prairie. The sun beats gently against your shoulders. Sweat gathers beneath your collar. The slow, steady motion of the horse becomes its own kind of meditation. The work is hard and unrelenting, but it carries a strange peace. You join the roundups, sleeping beneath a wide sky, with only a blanket for warmth, waking before dawn to the smell of coffee and wood smoke curling into the morning air. There are nights of sudden thunder and bright, cracking lightning, cattle stirring restlessly in the storm. There are days spent fording rivers or following faint trails through miles of open land. At first, the men of the Badlands regard this young Easterner with suspicion, the Harvard man with the polished boots and careful manners. But he works as they do. Long hours, few words, never asking for comfort. Over time, their doubt softens into respect. Out here, a person is measured not by where he comes from, but by what he can endure. And it is more than respect that Theodore finds in this place. In the quiet vastness of the plains, something within him begins to mend. The labor soothes him. The endless horizon stretches his thoughts outward until grief loosens its hold. He spends long days alone, following the tracks of elk through whispering pines, watching light shift across distant butts, listening to the wind hum through the grass. At night, beneath the stars, he sits beside the fire and breathes, slowly, deeply, feeling at last that he has survived. He writes during these years, working on a biography of Thomas Hart Benton, processing his experiences in essays and letters. The words flow more easily here, away from the weight of memory. He learns the rhythms of this country, comes to love its harshness and its honesty. The way it strips everything down to essentials. The winters are brutal. You huddle with him in a line shack during a blizzard, the wind howling like a living thing, the temperature plummeting to 40 below. You help search for cattle lost in the snow, finding them frozen, death, stark reminders of nature's indifference. In the summer, the heat is equally merciless. The sun beating down from a cloudless sky, the water holes drying up, the grass turning brown and brittle. And always, Theodore is testing himself, pushing his limits. He boxes with locals, earning respect through his willingness to take a beating. He tracks mountain lions, shoots grizzly bears, rides impossible horses. It is as if he is trying to exhaust something in himself, to burn away the grief through sheer physical exertion. Time passes. 2 years, then nearly 3. The Badlands have remade him, hardened him, but also given him back to himself. He is leaner now, tougher, more confident. The boy who struggled for breath in a New York townhouse has become a man forged in the crucible of the West. But he knows, increasingly, that he cannot stay here forever. The world is calling him back. Feel the transition coming, gentle as dawn. In December 1886, Theodore Roosevelt marries Edith Kermo Caro. She is a childhood friend, someone he has known almost his entire life. The wedding is quiet, almost secret, as if he is still protecting something fragile within himself. But Edith brings stability, brings order, brings a kind of calm strength that balances his manic energy. She is intelligent, well-read, practical, the perfect partner for a man whose ambitions are beginning to reassert themselves. They return to America and settle at Sagamore Hill, that house on the bluff at Oyster Bay that Theodore had begun building for Alice. With Edith, he transforms it into the home he had always envisioned. You walk through its rooms now, feeling the warmth of it, the lived-in comfort. The walls are lined with books, thousands of them, on every conceivable subject. Trophy heads from his hunting expeditions stare down from the walls. The air smells of wood smoke and leather, ink and paper, the salt breeze from the sound. The family grows. Theodore's daughter Alice, now living with them, is joined by Ted Jr., Kermit, Ethel, Archibald, and Quentin. Sagamore Hill fills with noise and chaos and joy. Children running through its halls, climbing trees, swimming in the sound, going on nature expeditions with their father, who teaches them the names of birds and trees, who reads to them at night from adventure stories and history books. Theodore's energy seems inexhaustible. He writes books, biographies, histories, essays on everything from ranch life to naval warfare. He returns to politics, accepting an appointment to the U.S. Civil Service Commission in 1889, where he throws himself into the battle against the spoils system, fighting to make government positions dependent on merit rather than political connections. In 1895, he becomes police commissioner of New York City, and you walk with him now through the nighttime streets of Manhattan, conducting his famous midnight rambles. He wants to see if his officers are doing their duty, so he prowls the city at all hours, appearing suddenly out of the shadows to check on beat cops, to ensure they are not sleeping or drinking or neglecting their posts. It is typical Roosevelt. Hands-on, energetic, refusing to lead from behind a desk. The work is frustrating, often futile. The corruption runs deep, the opposition is entrenched, and even Theodore's formidable will cannot fully reform the system. But he makes his mark, professionalizes the force, demands honesty and efficiency. And always, he is learning, building connections, making himself known as a man of integrity and action. The world slows down here. You breathe, and the moment stretches, timeless. In 1897, Theodore accepts the position of Assistant Secretary of the Navy. He is 38 years old, bursting with energy and ideas, convinced that America must build a powerful navy to protect its interests and project its power. You sit with him in his office in Washington, papers scattered across his desk, maps of the Pacific pinned to the walls. He is already thinking about war with Spain, already planning for conflict that most people consider unlikely. When the USS Maine explodes in Havana Harbor in February 1898, Theodore sees his moment. He agitates for war, pushes for intervention in Cuba, helps prepare the Navy for the conflict he believes is coming. When war is declared in April, he does not hesitate. He could stay safely in Washington, coordinate operations from his office, but that is not Theodore Roosevelt's way. He resigns his position and volunteers to fight. He is given permission to organize a volunteer cavalry regiment, and you watch as he assembles what will become the Rough Riders. They are an eclectic group: cowboys from the West, polo players from Harvard and Yale, Native Americans, gamblers, lawmen, men seeking adventure and glory. Theodore serves as second in command, under Colonel Leonard Wood, but it is clear from the start whose regiment this really is. Training camp in San Antonio is chaos. The heat is oppressive, the facilities inadequate, and these independent-minded men have to be molded into a fighting force. But there is excitement too, a sense of being part of something larger than themselves. Theodore moves among them, encouraging, cajoling, leading by example. When they finally receive orders to ship to Cuba, the mood is jubilant. You sail with them across the Gulf of Mexico, the ship crowded and uncomfortable, the sea stretching away in every direction under a burning sun. Cuba appears on the horizon like a green dream, mountains rising from the coastal plain, clouds gathering over the peaks. You land at Decoiri in June 1898, splashing through the surf, feeling the solid ground beneath your feet again, the tropical heat enveloping you like a wet blanket. The jungle is dense, suffocating. The air is thick with moisture and the buzz of insects. You march along muddy trails, sweat soaking your uniform, the weight of your equipment dragging at your shoulders. The first real engagement comes at Las Guasimas, where you experience the sudden terror of combat. The crack of rifle fire, the buzz of bullets, the screams of wounded men. Theodore is everywhere, seemingly immune to danger, rallying his troops, directing fire. And then comes July 1st, 1898, and the assault on the San Juan Heights. You are there now, in the terrible heat of that Cuban afternoon. The Rough Riders are dismounted. Most of their horses never made it to Cuba, and they are positioned at the base of Kettle Hill, which rises steeply before them. Beyond it, San Juan Hill dominates the landscape, bristling with Spanish defenses. The order to advance is confused, delayed. Men crouch in the jungle, under fire, taking casualties, waiting for someone to lead them forward. And then Theodore Roosevelt makes his decision. He mounts his horse, one of the few available, and begins riding up and down the line, calling to his men to advance. His voice carries over the sound of gunfire, high and emphatic. Are you afraid to stand up when I am on horseback? You rise with the Rough Riders and begin the charge up Kettle Hill. Time seems to slow and accelerate simultaneously. You run through high grass, up the slope, bullets singing past all around, men falling around you. Theodore's ahead, still mounted, an impossible target, and somehow untouched. The Spanish fire from trenches at the summit, but the momentum of the charge cannot be stopped. You reach the top, breathless, exhilarated, terrified. The Spanish retreat, and from Kettle Hill, you can see San Juan Hill, the real objective, where other American units are also advancing. Theodore doesn't wait for orders. He leads his men forward again, linking up with the main assault, sweeping over the Spanish positions. When the battle ends and silence falls, Theodore Roosevelt stands atop San Juan Hill, looking out over the battlefield. The cost has been high. Men he knew, men he led, lie dead or wounded on the slopes. But the victory is complete. The Spanish positions are taken, and the path to Santiago lies open. Let the moment settle. Feel the weight of what has happened here, the transformation of Theodore Roosevelt, from politician to warrior, the creation of a myth that will follow him for the rest of his life. The Rough Riders return to America as heroes. Theodore is famous now, his face in every newspaper, his exploits celebrated across the nation. The Republican Party of New York, recognizing his popularity, nominates him for governor. He campaigns with characteristic energy, traveling the state, speaking to crowds, bringing some of his Rough Riders along to add color and excitement. He wins easily. As governor, from 1899 to 1900, Theodore proves himself an effective executive. You watch him navigate the complexities of state politics, pushing reform while managing the practical realities of power. He fights against corporate corruption, strengthens labor laws, protects the environment. The party bosses, particularly Thomas Platt, find him troublesome, too independent, too willing to put principle ahead of party interest. They decide to neutralize him by promoting him. The vice presidency in 1900, running with William McKinley. It is meant to be a dead end, a ceremonial position that will remove Theodore from real power. He is reluctant, but accepts. And in November 1900, McKinley and Roosevelt win in a landslide. The vice presidency is as boring as Theodore feared. He presides over the Senate, attends functions, has little real influence. He is restless, frustrated, talking of returning to law school, of finding some other avenue for his energies. And then, in September 1901, everything changes. You are with Theodore at a luncheon on Isle La Motte in Lake Champlain when the telegram arrives. President McKinley has been shot by an anarchist in Buffalo. Theodore rushes to Buffalo, but McKinley seems to be recovering, and Theodore is assured the president will survive. He returns to the Adirondacks, to a hiking trip in the mountains with his family. You climb with him through the pristine wilderness, the air crisp and clean, the forest golden with early autumn color. You reach the summit of Mount Marcy, the highest peak in New York, and stand looking out over the endless rolling mountains, the lakes scattered like mirrors among the trees. It is September 13th, 1901, and a guide is racing up the trail behind you, carrying a message. McKinley is dying. Theodore must come at once. The descent is frantic, through darkening woods, rain beginning to fall. Theodore reaches a buckboard, waiting at the trailhead, and begins a wild midnight ride through the mountains to the nearest railroad station. You feel every jolt and sway of that desperate journey, the horses straining, the driver urging them on, Theodore sitting rigid, facing the reality that is rushing toward him. He reaches Buffalo on September 14th to learn that William McKinley is dead. At 3:30 that afternoon, in a private home, Theodore Roosevelt takes the oath of office as the 26th President of the United States. He is 42 years old, the youngest president in American history. Feel the magnitude of this moment, the weight of responsibility settling onto shoulders that have been preparing for it, perhaps all along. Theodore Roosevelt enters the presidency with energy and vision. He moves into the White House with his large, boisterous family, and the executive mansion is transformed. Children slide down banisters, play hide-and-seek in the staterooms, keep a menagerie of pets, snakes, badgers, a small bear, a pony named Algonquin, who once rode the elevator to visit Archie when he was sick. But beneath the chaos, there is serious purpose. Theodore sees the presidency as a bully pulpit, a platform from which to advocate for what he believes is right. And he believes the country needs reform, needs a government strong enough to rein in the excesses of unchecked corporate power while protecting the rights of working people. You sit with him in his office, the room dominated by a massive desk, walls lined with books and hunting trophies. He reads voraciously, a book a day, sometimes more, on subjects ranging from history to poetry to natural science. He meets with senators and cabinet members, with labor leaders and businessmen, with writers and scientists and explorers. His mind is omnivorous, his curiosity endless. His first major challenge comes with the Northern Securities Company, a massive railroad trust that threatens to monopolize transportation in the Northwest. Previous presidents have been reluctant to challenge corporate power, but Theodore instructs his attorney general to file suit under the Sherman Antitrust Act. The case eventually reaches the Supreme Court, and in 1904, the government wins. The trust is broken up, and Theodore establishes himself as a trust buster, willing to use federal power to ensure fair competition. But he is not anti-business. He distinguishes between good trusts that operate efficiently and fairly, and bad trusts that abuse their power. His goal is regulation, not destruction. He wants a government strong enough to act as referee between capital and labor, ensuring that neither dominates at the expense of the public good. In 1902, you stand with him during the anthracite coal strike. Coal miners in Pennsylvania have walked off the job, demanding better wages and working conditions. The mine owners refuse to negotiate, and as winter approaches, the nation faces a coal shortage that could leave millions without heat. Theodore intervenes, calling both sides to Washington, using the weight of his office to push for arbitration. It is unprecedented. No previous president has intervened in a labor dispute on the side of mediation. The strike is settled, the miners win significant concessions, and Theodore establishes the principle of the square deal: fair treatment for all parties, capital, labor, and the public. Conservation becomes one of his great passions. Theodore loves nature with the enthusiasm of the amateur naturalist he has always been, but he also understands that the nation's natural resources are being squandered, that without protection, future generations will inherit a stripped and barren land. You walk with him through the wilderness areas he is determined to save. The Grand Canyon, the Petrified Forest, the Olympic Peninsula. He establishes the U.S. Forest Service under Gifford Pinchot, sets aside 230 million acres of public land, creates 5 national parks, 18 national monuments, and 51 wildlife refuges. The world slows down here. You breathe, and the moment stretches, timeless. In foreign policy, Theodore operates under the principle he famously articulates: speak softly and carry a big stick. He believes in peace, but also in strength, in the idea that America must be powerful enough to protect its interests and play a role on the world stage. His greatest achievement is the Panama Canal. For centuries, the dream of a canal connecting the Atlantic and Pacific has tantalized explorers and engineers. The French tried and failed, defeated by disease and the immensity of the task. Theodore is determined to succeed. When Colombia balks at the terms for a canal through its territory, Theodore supports a Panamanian revolution, quickly recognizes the new government, and negotiates a treaty to build the canal. You stand with him on the Isthmus of Panama in 1906, the only sitting president to leave the country during his term. The work is staggering in its scope. Thousands of workers carving through mountains, battling malaria and yellow fever, moving millions of cubic yards of earth. Theodore tours the construction sites, operates a steam shovel for photographers, speaks with engineers and workers, marvels at the ambition and achievement. The canal, when completed in 1914, will be one of the engineering wonders of the world, a testament to American ingenuity and determination. But Theodore also plays peacemaker. When war between Russia and Japan threatens to destabilize East Asia, he offers to mediate. The negotiations take place at Portsmouth, New Hampshire, in the summer of 1905. You sit in those quiet rooms while diplomats from 2 great powers work through their differences, with Theodore guiding, suggesting, finding common ground. The Treaty of Portsmouth ends the war, and in 1906, Theodore receives the Nobel Peace Prize, the first American to be so honored. In 1904, Theodore runs for president in his own right. The victory is overwhelming. He wins by the largest popular margin of any candidate to that date. Standing before crowds on election night, he makes a promise he will later regret. He will not run for another term. A president should serve no more than 2 terms, following Washington's precedent, and since he has already served most of McKinley's term, he will retire in 1909. The second term brings more reforms. The Pure Food and Drug Act and the Meat Inspection Act, passed in 1906, established federal oversight of food safety after Upton Sinclair's "The Jungle Exposes Horrific Conditions in Meatpacking Plants." The Hepburn Act strengthens the Interstate Commerce Commission's power to regulate railroad rates. Theodore continues his conservation work, continues to use the presidency as a bully pulpit for progressive causes. But he also faces resistance. Conservative Republicans in Congress grow increasingly frustrated with his activism. The Democratic Party is split between progressives who admire him and traditionalists who fear him. The press, which once adored him, becomes more critical. Theodore remains popular with the public, but is creating powerful enemies among the political and business elite. At Sagamore Hill, you find respite from the pressures of Washington. The house is alive with family. Children growing, Edith managing the household with quiet efficiency, Theodore escaping to his library or leading expeditions through the woods and along the beaches. He boxes with military aides, plays tennis with a ferocity that amazes guests, reads to his children at night, remains as energetic at 50 as he was at 20. As his presidency winds down, Theodore must choose a successor. He settles on William Howard Taft, his Secretary of War, a capable administrator who Theodore believes will continue his policies. Taft is elected easily in 1908, and Theodore prepares to leave office. On March 4, 1909, you stand with Theodore Roosevelt as he hands power to his successor. He is only 50 years old, young for an ex-president, and though he has accomplished much, he is not ready to retire to a quiet life. The question is, what comes next? Feel the transition, the shift from power to uncertainty, from the center of the world's attention to Africa. Theodore decides to go to Africa on a safari sponsored by the Smithsonian Institution to collect specimens for the museum. It is the adventure of a lifetime, and you are there with him, landing at Mombasa in April 1909, stepping into a world of savage beauty and primal danger. For nearly a year, you trek across East Africa, through Kenya, Uganda, the Belgian Congo, and Sudan. The landscape is overwhelming. Vast plains where herds of wildebeest stretch to the horizon, acacia trees standing like sentinels, Mount Kilimanjaro rising snow-capped against the equatorial sky. The heat is intense during the day, the nights cool and filled with the sounds of lions roaring, hyenas cackling, the strange calls of birds and insects. Theodore hunts with the enthusiasm he brings to everything. This is not sport alone. The expedition collects thousands of specimens for scientific study, including hundreds of large mammals. But it is also deeply personal. Theodore is in his element here, testing himself against dangerous game, lions, elephants, rhinos, buffalo. He writes detailed accounts of each hunt, the stalking, the shot, the moment of truth when hunter and hunted face each other. You camp under African stars, the Milky Way so bright it casts shadows. And Theodore writes, discusses philosophy and history with his son Kermit, who has accompanied him. The expedition is physically demanding. Long marches in the heat, sleeping in tents, dealing with insects, parasites, the ever-present threat of disease. But Theodore thrives on it, seems younger, more vital than he did in his last years in Washington. After Africa, the Roosevelts tour Europe. Theodore delivers lectures, meets with kings and presidents, is feted as a celebrity and statesman. But all the while, news from America troubles him. Taft, he hears, is abandoning his progressive policies, aligning with conservative Republicans, allowing the gains of the Roosevelt years to be rolled back. Theodore returns to America in June 1910, determined to stay out of politics. But the pull is too strong. He begins speaking out, advocating for what he calls the new nationalism, an even more progressive vision than he pursued as president, calling for greater federal regulation, social welfare programs, more power for ordinary people against entrenched wealth. By 1912, the break with Taft is complete. Theodore challenges him for the Republican nomination, winning most of the primaries, but the party establishment backs Taft. At the Republican convention in Chicago, you watch as Theodore's supporters are outmaneuvered, as Taft secures the nomination through backroom deals and parliamentary tactics. Theodore's response is to bolt the party. His supporters form the Progressive Party, and at their convention in August 1912, they nominate Theodore by acclamation. He accepts with a speech that electrifies the crowd. We stand at Armageddon, and we battle for the Lord. The campaign is unlike any before it. Theodore advocates for women's suffrage, for direct election of senators, for workers' compensation, for a minimum wage, for unemployment insurance. The Progressive Party is nicknamed the Bull Moose Party after Theodore. Asked about his health, responds that he is as fit as a bull moose. In October, you are with him in Milwaukee when a would-be assassin shoots him in the chest. The bullet passes through his metal glasses case and the folded manuscript of his speech before lodging in his chest muscle. Theodore staggers but does not fall. He coughs into his hand, sees no blood, and realizes the bullet has not reached his lung. His bodyguards tackle the gunman, but Theodore stops them from beating him. Against everyone's advice, Theodore insists on delivering his scheduled speech. You stand in the auditorium as he opens his coat to show the audience the blood spreading across his shirt. "Friends," he says, "I shall ask you to be as quiet as possible. I don't know whether you fully understand that I have just been shot. It takes more than that to kill a bull moose." He speaks for 90 minutes, the manuscript blood-stained, his voice gradually weakening, before finally allowing himself to be taken to the hospital. The bullet is lodged too close to his heart to be safely removed, and he will carry it with him for the rest of his life. The shooting wins him sympathy, but not the election. The Republican vote is split between Theodore and Taft, and Woodrow Wilson, the Democratic candidate, wins easily. Theodore receives more votes than Taft, a remarkable achievement for a third-party candidate. But it is not enough. He is 54 years old, and for the second time in his life, he must confront the question of what comes after power. The world slows down here. You breathe, and the moment stretches, timeless. Theodore chooses adventure. In October 1913, he embarks on what will be the most dangerous expedition of his life. An exploration of an unmapped river in the Brazilian wilderness, known to the indigenous people as the Rio da Vida, the River of Doubt. You sail with him to South America, then travel inland through the Amazon basin. The journey even to the starting point is arduous. Weeks of travel through jungle and swamp, equipment constantly breaking down, the heat and humidity oppressive. The expedition includes his son Kermit, the Brazilian explorer Candido Rondon, and a team of porters and paddlers. Their goal is to trace the River of Doubt from its source to where it meets the Amazon, mapping a river that appears on no chart. In December 1913, you push off into the unknown. The river winds through dense jungle, the canopy overhead so thick that little light penetrates. The air is heavy with moisture, alive with the hum of insects. You travel in dugout canoes, paddling through dark water, constantly alert for rapids, for submerged rocks, for the caimans that sun themselves on the banks. The difficulties begin almost immediately. Rapids force you to portage around them, hauling the heavy canoes through jungle where every step must be cut with machetes. The work is exhausting, the heat draining. Supplies begin to run short. The expedition is moving more slowly than planned, consuming more food than anticipated. And then, in February 1914, disaster strikes. One of the canoes is lost in rapids, taking with it precious equipment and supplies. Theodore, trying to save it, jumps into the river and injures his leg on a submerged rock. The wound becomes infected in the tropical heat, and fever sets in. You watch as he grows weaker, his leg swelling, the infection spreading despite the limited medical supplies available. The expedition must continue. To stop is to die. You push on down the river, but Theodore can barely walk. Kermit and Rondon take turns supporting him, helping him over the portages, keeping him moving. At night, in the makeshift camps, Theodore's fever rages. He becomes delirious, reciting poetry, Coleridge's Kubla Khan, over and over. His voice hoarse, his body wasted. He asks Kermit and Rondon to leave him behind, to save themselves and the expedition. He has morphine, he says. He can end it quickly and spare the others the burden of carrying him. But they refuse. Kermit, especially, will not abandon his father. Day after day, they carry Theodore forward, down the endless river, through the green hell of the jungle. The expedition loses men. One drowns, Another murders a companion and flees into the jungle, never to be seen again. Food runs desperately short. You are eating half rations, then quarter rations, supplementing with what can be hunted or gathered, which is never enough. Everyone is sick with fever, weakened by hunger, plagued by insects and parasites. But slowly, impossibly, the river begins to widen. Other rivers join it. You are approaching civilization. In late April 1914, after nearly 5 months in the jungle, the expedition emerges at a rubber settlement on the Amazon. Theodore is alive, barely. He has lost 55 pounds. The infection in his leg is still raging, the fever still spiking, but he has survived. The River of Doubt is renamed Rio Roosevelt, and the expedition's findings contribute significantly to the geographical knowledge of the Amazon basin. But the cost to Theodore is immense. He will never fully recover from the ordeal. The tropical diseases he contracted, the lingering effects of the infected wound, the sheer physical toll, all of these will plague him for the remaining years of his life. You return with him to America, to Sagamore Hill, where Edith nurses him back to a semblance of health. He is 55 years old, but looks older, moves more slowly, tires more easily. The bullet from Milwaukee is still in his chest. The parasites from Brazil are still in his blood, and his legendary vitality, while not gone, is diminished. The world is changing too. In August 1914, war erupts in Europe, a conflict on a scale never before seen. Theodore watches with horror and fascination as the great powers tear each other apart. He is appalled by the violence, but believes that America cannot remain neutral, that the nation must prepare for the possibility of being drawn in. When the Lusitania is sunk by a German submarine in 1915, killing more than 100 Americans, Theodore calls for immediate entry into the war. President Wilson counsels patience, and Theodore excoriates him for weakness. The split between the two men, already wide, becomes a chasm. Theodore sees Wilson as an intellectual coward, a man who hides behind words while failing to act. Wilson sees Theodore as a warmonger, reckless and bloodthirsty. America finally enters the war in April 1917, and Theodore immediately asks Wilson for permission to raise a volunteer division as he had raised the Rough Riders. He envisions leading his men to France, fighting one last time for a cause he believes in. But Wilson denies the request. Theodore is nearly 60, in poor health, and the days of volunteer cavalry are over. This is industrial warfare, requiring professional soldiers and modern organization, not the romantic heroism of another era. It is a bitter blow. Theodore is left to contribute through words, alone, writing, speaking, advocating for the war effort. But his heart is in France with his sons. All 4 of his boys enlist. Kermit joins the British Army before America enters the war. Ted, Archie, and Quentin all see action with American forces. You sit with Theodore and Edith at Sagamore Hill, waiting for letters, reading casualty lists with dread, living in constant fear of the telegram that will shatter their world. The telegram comes in July 1918. Quentin, the youngest, the most exuberant, the pilot who loved to fly, has been shot down and killed over France. He was 20 years old. Theodore receives the news in his library at Sagamore Hill, surrounded by books and maps and memories. He stands at the window, looking out over the Sound, and you see the light go out in his eyes again, as it did 34 years ago, when Alice died. Quentin's death, he will later say, was the only thing that could have broken me. But he does not break, not visibly. He continues his work, continues writing and speaking. Archie is wounded, but survives. Ted is gassed and wounded, but survives. Kermit survives. But Quentin is gone, and with him something essential in Theodore Roosevelt. The war ends in November 1918, and Theodore is active in planning what he hopes will be a Republican return to power in 1920. There is talk of him running for president again, and he does not discourage it. He is only 60, and the old fire, diminished but not extinguished, still burns. Christmas 1918 at Sagamore Hill is subdued. Quentin's absence haunts every room. Theodore is ill again, his old ailments flaring up, new pains joining old ones. After Christmas, he is hospitalized for several weeks with inflammatory rheumatism and an abscess in his ear. He returns to Sagamore Hill on Christmas Day, weak but characteristically determined to continue. You are with him in his final days, in the house he built, surrounded by his books and his family. He continues to read, to write articles, to correspond with friends and political allies. On January 5th, 1919, he works at his desk, writing an editorial. That evening, he tells Edith, "I wonder if you will ever know how I love Sagamore Hill." That night, he goes to bed early, complaining of breathing difficulties. A servant checks on him at midnight and finds him sleeping peacefully. Edith checks on him at 2 a.m. and adjusts his breathing tube. At 4 a.m., when the servant checks again, Theodore Roosevelt is dead. He died in his sleep, quietly, without struggle, at the age of 60. The world slows down here. You breathe, and the moment stretches timeless. The funeral is held at Christ Church in Oyster Bay, a small service for family and close friends. There is no lying in state, no elaborate ceremony. Theodore would not have wanted it. He is buried in nearby Young's Memorial Cemetery, on a hillside overlooking the land he loved. The grave is simple, marked by a plain stone, unpretentious and honest, like the man himself. The world mourns. Newspapers across the country and around the globe print tributes. His old adversaries and allies alike recognize that something unique has passed from the world. Death had to take him sleeping. Vice President Thomas Marshall says, "For if Roosevelt had been awake, there would have been a fight." But death is not the end of Theodore Roosevelt's story. His legacy lives on in the lands he protected, the policies he championed, the example he set. You can see it now if you close your eyes and let yourself drift through the America he helped create. Walk through a national park, Yellowstone, Yosemite, the Grand Canyon, and you walk on land he saved. The forests and wildlife refuges, the monuments and wilderness areas, all stand as testament to his vision that some things are too precious to be destroyed for profit, that the nation has a duty to preserve its natural heritage for future generations. Consider the power of the federal government to regulate corporations, to protect workers, to ensure food safety and fair competition. These ideas, once radical, are now accepted as normal functions of government. Theodore Roosevelt did not invent progressivism, but he gave it presidential power and legitimacy. He demonstrated that government could be a force for good, not just a referee, but an active participant in creating a fair and just society. Think about American power in the world. The Panama Canal, the Great White Fleet, the Nobel Peace Prize. Theodore Roosevelt helped transform America from a regional power to a global one. But he did so believing that power must be exercised responsibly. That strength carried with it the obligation to work for peace and justice. And then there is the man himself. The example he set simply by living as he did. Born weak, he made himself strong. Struck by tragedy, he rebuilt his life. Driven from power, he sought new adventures. Throughout it all, he never stopped reading, learning, growing, engaging with life in all its complexity and richness. He believed in what he called the strenuous life, the idea that comfort and ease are not the goals we should pursue, that we become our best selves through challenge and effort, that there is deep satisfaction in testing ourselves against difficult tasks. He believed in duty, in service, in the idea that those who have been given much must give much in return. He was not perfect. His views on race, while progressive for his time, were limited by the prejudices of his era. His enthusiasm for warfare sometimes clouded his judgment. His energy could become aggression, his confidence arrogance. He could be self-righteous, impulsive, unable to see perspectives different from his own. But his flaws were human, understandable, forgivable in the context of his era and his achievements. What remains, what endures, is the example of a life lived with passion and purpose. A life that refused to accept limitations, that saw obstacles as opportunities, that believed in the power of individual effort to change the world. You are back at Sagamore Hill now, in the quiet of evening. The house stands solid on its bluff, looking out over Oyster Bay toward the Sound. The light is fading, painting the sky in shades of coral and gold. The wind moves through the trees, carrying with it the salt smell of the sea, the green scent of grass and leaves. Inside, Theodore's library is as he left it. Books lining the walls, floor to ceiling, thousands of volumes on every subject imaginable. His desk sits in the corner, papers still on it, pen still in its holder, as if he might walk in at any moment to finish some unfinished thought. The trophy heads gaze down with glass eyes. The lion from Africa, the elk from the Rockies, the moose from the North Woods. You can almost hear the house as it was when Theodore was alive. Children's laughter echoing through the halls, the sound of Theodore's voice, high and emphatic, reading aloud from some adventure story. Edith's quiet reminders to wash hands before dinner. The comfortable chaos of a large and loving family. But now there is only silence. The peaceful silence of a house that has done its work, that has sheltered generations, that holds within its walls the memories of a life extraordinarily lived. Outside, the stars are emerging, one by one, in the darkening sky. The same stars Theodore watched from the Dakota Badlands when he was young and lost. The stars he saw from African camps and Brazilian rivers. The stars that shone over battlefields and presidential inauguration. They remain constant and eternal, while human lives flash past like mayflies, brilliant and brief. Theodore Roosevelt believed that life should be lived intensely, that every moment mattered, that we have a duty to make the most of whatever gifts we have been given. He believed in courage, not the absence of fear, but the will to act despite it. He believed in hard work, in honesty, in the power of education and art and literature to enrich and enlighten. He believed that America could be a force for good in the world, that democracy required constant vigilance and active participation, that citizenship was not a passive state but a calling. Do what you can, with what you have, where you are, he once wrote, and he lived by those words every day of his life. The wind picks up now, rustling through the trees around Sagamore Hill, carrying with it the whisper of waves against the shore. Night has fallen fully, and the house stands dark against the star-filled sky. Inside, in the library, moonlight falls across the books and the desk and the empty chair where Theodore Roosevelt once sat, writing, reading, planning his next adventure. But he is at rest now, on the hillside not far away, under the trees he loved, in the soil of the land he fought to preserve. The struggles are over, the battles fought, the races run. Theodore Roosevelt, who lived so intensely that he seemed to contain within himself the energy of 10 ordinary men, has found peace at last. And perhaps, in some way, he is still here. In the wind that moves through the forests he saved, in the mountains that bear his name, in the wild places that remain wild, because he had the vision to protect them. Perhaps he is in the books he wrote, still inspiring readers to live more fully, more courageously. Perhaps he is in the ideals he championed, still calling us to be better citizens, better stewards of the earth, better versions of ourselves. The world moves on, as it always does. New challenges arise, new leaders emerge, new stories unfold. But Theodore Roosevelt's story remains a testament to what one person can accomplish through determination and will, through courage and vision, through a refusal to accept that things must be as they have always been. Breathe deeply now. Let the story settle into you like sediment in still water. Feel the weight of this life, this legacy, this extraordinary journey from a sickly child struggling for breath in a New York townhouse to a man who changed his nation and left his mark on the world. The lamps burn low now at Sagamore Hill. The pages of books lie still and silent. The wind continues its eternal song through the trees. The waves continue their rhythmic conversation with the shore, and the stars wheel overhead in their ancient patterns, unconcerned with human comings and goings, human triumphs and tragedies. Theodore Roosevelt lived as few people ever live, fully, intensely, courageously, joyfully. He knew deep grief and soaring triumph. He experienced the loneliness of the Dakota Badlands and the adulation of crowds. He walked with cowboys and kings, with naturalists and presidents, with soldiers and scholars. He wrote books that endure, protected lands that remain, established principles that guide us still. And now, as you rest here in the quiet, as your breathing deepens and slows, as the story of his life settles into memory like snow falling on a winter landscape, you can carry forward something of what he taught. That life is meant to be lived, that challenges are opportunities, that we each have within us the capacity to be more than we think we are. The night deepens. The house at Sagamore Hill stands watch over Oyster Bay, as it has for more than a century, a keeper of memories, a testament to a life well lived. Inside, in the library, the books wait patiently on their shelves, filled with words and ideas, adventures and philosophies, the accumulated wisdom of ages that Theodore Roosevelt loved to explore. You can rest now. Let the weight of the day fall away. Let your muscles relax, your thoughts slow, your breathing deepen into the natural rhythm of sleep. Theodore Roosevelt's story is complete. His race is run, his legacy secure. He would want you to rest, to gather your strength, to prepare for tomorrow's challenges and opportunities. The sound is calm tonight, its waters dark and smooth, reflecting the stars like a mirror. Somewhere in the distance, an owl calls, its voice soft and lonely in the darkness. The trees whisper ancient secrets to each other, their roots deep in the earth, their branches reaching toward the sky. This is the America Theodore Roosevelt fought to preserve, a land of natural beauty and wild places, a nation of ideals and aspirations, a country where ordinary people could rise to do extraordinary things. He was not born great, but made himself so. He was not given strength, but built it. He did not inherit his legacy, but created it through years of effort and determination. And as you drift now, as consciousness begins to blur at the edges, as the story recedes into the comfortable distance of memory, you can take comfort in knowing that such a life was possible, that such achievements were real, that one person, through courage and will and unwavering commitment to principle, can indeed change the world. The wind moves through the trees one last time, carrying with it the scent of salt and pine, of earth and growing things, of the vast, patient presence of nature that surrounds and sustains all human endeavor. Theodore Roosevelt understood this, loved this, fought to protect this. He knew that we are part of something larger than ourselves, that the land and its creatures deserve our care, that we have a duty to those who will come after us to leave the world better than we found it. Sleep now. Rest in the knowledge of a life fully lived, of battles fought with courage, of principles upheld with integrity. Theodore Roosevelt sleeps in his grave on the hillside, at peace after his long and remarkable journey. And you too can rest, can let go of the day's concerns and worries, can surrender to the gentle pull of sleep. The lamps burn low, the pages turn to silence. The stars continue their ancient dance across the heavens, indifferent and eternal. And at Sagamore Hill, the house stands quiet and dark, holding within its walls the memory of laughter and loss, of triumph and tragedy, of a life that burned so brightly it seemed it would never end. And yet, like all lives, did. Theodore Roosevelt rests now, and so do you. The story is complete. The journey is over. The night embraces you with gentle arms, and in the darkness, there is peace. Rest well, sleep deeply, and when you wake, perhaps you will carry forward something of Theodore Roosevelt's spirit, his courage, his curiosity, his commitment to living life with intensity and purpose, his belief that we each have within us the capacity to be more than we think we are, to do more than we thought possible, to leave the world a little better than we found. But for now, there is only rest, only peace, only the quiet darkness and the gentle rhythm of your breathing, slowing, deepening, carrying you down into sleep. The wind in the trees, the waves on the shore, the stars overhead, and silence, deep, restful, peaceful silence. Sleep now. Sleep.